Pour écouter cette session en français, veuillez cliquer en bas de votre écran sur l'onglet Interprétation et sélectionner le drapeau français.
Hello, bonjour.
Habari za leo.
On behalf of ICLEI Africa, the Africa Center for Cities, Our Future Cities,
Surge Africa and the Red Cross Crescent Climate Center,
we are delighted to welcome you to the Rise Africa 2023 Action Festival.
Rise Africa is a platform that brings together thinkers, doers, and enablers
to inspire action for sustainable cities.
This is the third edition of our virtual festival.
It brings together insights, practices, and visions from across the continent.
This year's theme is The Cities We Want.
the cities we want.
the cities we want.
The cities we want.
This mirrors the African Union 2063 Agenda vision, the Africa we want.
It is a wonderful Pan-African call for transformative change.
However, the agenda does not adequately embrace urbanization as a potential positive force for improving prosperity, inclusivity, and environmental well-being on the continent.
We need more emphasis on the role of cities and local action. And this festival aims to provide inputs into this agenda.
The cities we have are
Expanding,
incomplete,
inventive,
contested,
facing impending crisis, yet brimming with potential.
The cities we want are
people-centered,
Safe and healthy.
beacons of culture,
unflinchingly modern.
And adapting to change and leading global innovation.
We'll make these cities through
Experimenting,
learning
collaborating,
and amplifying the everyday actions of people who are shaping their cities.
The festival invites you to embrace different ways of knowing,
It invites you to forge new partnerships,
Experiment with new concepts and ideas.
to seek ways to bridge science, business, policy, and the arts.
Together, let's enter this space in the spirit of poetic possibilities.
À l'encre de mon sang, au papier de ma langue, à mes yeux qui tanguent lentement dans le vide, rêvant un jour de laisser des traces de regard sur les villes que nous voulons et imaginons au-delà des vers. Entre deux effluves, mon être crie utopie, mon cœur murmure héritage. Mon âme, elle, chante avenir. De villes riches de leur multiplicité, multiples dans leur diversité, unique pluralité niée hier s'est avancée vers un demain déjà avorté. Enracinement certes, mais ouverture dans ce village planétaire, laisser les sens alertes et réagir. Entendre la cacophonie banalisée des inégalités sociétales criardes laissées en fond sonore, voir et questionner le décor, bâtir et consentir à l'action qui sépare le rêve de la réalité. Sentir la fragrance vitale, belle et verte, inévitable baume au cœur, accepter notre responsabilité de léguer à nos enfants un monde en bonne santé. Démocratiser le goût, que plus aucun palais, d'aucune bouche, d'aucun enfant, d'aucun pays ne soit plus jamais sec. Démocratiser le goût des rêves, des voyages qui s'exécutent, quel que soit l'âge, le long des pages, au fil des chapitres, sur le pupitre de la connaissance, seul germe du choix. Toucher l'idée d'infrastructure qui marche allègrement sur le chemin de l'innovation. Enracinement certes, mais ouverture dans ce village planétaire. Laisser les sens alertes, mais surtout réagir.
Welcome everyone. My name is Christiana Asala. I'm the Executive Director of the Cognito Project, and we are so happy to have you join us into this session as we explore the topic, breaking barriers, promoting equity and inclusion in urbanizing Africa. So please, we want to hear which of the cities you are joining us from today. Kindly type on the chat function which city you're joining from. And while we do that, we'll be sharing a video just to give a brief overview of the discussion today. We have people from
to know what
a lot of places. We have New York, we have Abuja, we have Tanzania, we have Texas. Yeah, a lot of people from Abuja. We have from Mali, Enugu, Jos, amazing, Niger, Arusha. Thank you all so much for joining in. Yeah, Jokudu, you can please play the video.
One of the most profound realities the African continent is undergoing in the 21st century is urbanization. Why? Because more and more people are migrating from rural areas to urban settlements in search of greener pastures and opportunities. Unfortunately, this has given rise to peri-urban and slum settlements in and around cities to cater for the influx of informal sexual workforce and low-income earners who make up 60 to 70% of the workforce. Few days ago, an urban slum in the heart of Abuja, Nigeria's capital city called Gishiri, was demolished, leaving homes destroyed, lives uprooted, dreams shattered, families displaced, and businesses lost. A question arises: how can we make our cities more inclusive and equitable as we continue to urbanize, especially for the marginalized group? People make the city. We therefore should not be planning for a city and forget about the people that make it up, especially those that fall into the middle, lower class, and constitute the majority of the workforce, to close the already wide gap of inequality in our cities.
All right, you're all welcome once again. If you're just joining us, I'm Christy Asala, and I will be your host for this session. The theme for this Rise Africa is the cities we want. And when we saw this theme, we asked ourselves as voice community, what kind of city do we want to see? And for us, the city we want to see is a city that is inclusive and provides, equity share of infrastructure in urbanization. And we know this is far from reality we see in most of our cities. And we thought, how do we break this barrier, to see a more equity and inclusive city around us? We hope by the end of this session, we'll be able to answer most of those questions and probably even have more questions we would be able to act on as we move on from here. To take us further into this session, we will be calling on Ijeoma. Ijeoma is the program director for Voice in Nigeria. Ijeoma, you're in the building. She'll be giving us a keynote address. Okay, so I think we would probably just keep the keynote address. She's probably having difficulty joining us. And because of time, we've actually spent quite a number of time. We'll be moving to the very first panel for today. Today's panel will be hosted by, will be moderated by Kasena Dashe and Cedric. Kasena Dashe is the program manager for Cognito, and Cedric is the linking and learning amplifier officer for Voice in Nigeria. Cedric and Kasena, over to you.
Yeah.
All right. I'm hoping everyone can hear. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, good evening from wherever you are. Hi, Cedric, are you there?
Live and direct.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining. I'm really excited to have you all here. We're going to have an interesting conversation with an interesting group of people. I would like to speak first with Mrs. Agatha Naji. Mrs. Agatha Naji is a versatile corporate and social entrepreneur. She's a US-based, internationally recognized Ashoka Fellow, a globally recognized change maker and social entrepreneur with over 30 years of multi-sectoral top management experience in pioneering social change and doing amazing work with different organizations at grassroots level as well. She is the executive director of Dewdrop Foundation, a not-for-profit organization in Nigeria. And her organization and social work has been supporting vulnerable communities as well as marginalized populations at the grassroots level. So I'm very excited to have Mrs. Agatha Naji here, and I would love to ask her the first question.
Thank you
Mrs.
very much.
Naji, let me know if you can hear.
Yes, I am. And thank you for inviting me.
Fantastic.
You hear me?
Thank you very much for being here. Thank you. So we're very interested in the amazing work that you do with the elderly population. They are a gold mine and a reservoir of knowledge and valuable insights. And oftentimes they are neglected when we're planning our cities and generally in program and policy implementation as well, which is a shame, I personally think. Can you share your experience of the major challenges that elderly people face in our cities, and how can we be better inclusive of this group in our urbanization plans? If you could kindly share that in 3 minutes, please.
I was about to ask if I have up to a year to talk about it, but thank you for the opportunity. I can tell you for sure that all of us here would probably be praying for good old age. And it is important that as we make that prayer, and hopefully we are answered by the Almighty, that we actually think about what that future would be like for us. A lot of people retire when they're 60 and they're still able to contribute to society. But our society just tends to push elderly people away. So the work we've done in the grassroots level, we found out through a voice sponsored project on elder abuse in about 11 communities, and subsequent work we've done with a community of practice on elderly care, which comprises of about 16 or more NGOs in Nigeria. There is a similar theme across the nation. Elderly people are ignored, they are lonely, they have all sorts of challenges. They end up feeling like they are not useful citizens. Meanwhile, like you rightly said, they have so much knowledge that they can share with everybody that would make the society better. What are the key issues? If I'm an older person, which I actually am because I'm above 60, I would like to be able to contribute, bearing in mind the fact that a lot of my experiences at this age are experiences that the younger generation may or may not need to live through in order to gain from it. So I need a situation where elderly people can be gathered together and we tap into their knowledge, we tap into the culture, we tap into the history and use it to make our generations that are coming a lot more knowledgeable and stronger for the challenges they will face in their lives. We need green cities where people can walk around in parks and feel safe. We need safe places where elderly people will have a voice, where they can share what their issues are with each other. And we have, from our experience, in setting up what we call synergies associations, being able to get that done for some of our elderly people in the rural communities. So in a nutshell, we would like our cities to be green and beautiful, to have the infrastructure that would support elderly people to be a bit more independent. We need facilities that will take care of their welfare, and it has to be affordable. It has to be accessible, and we need to show love, intergenerational love to our elderly persons. I'll leave it at that, and I'll be happy to contribute later.
Thank you so much. I'm sure your contributions has proved to everyone listening that indeed elderly people are a gold mine of information and a reservoir of insight, valuable insight. Thank you so much for your contributions. I would hand over to my co-host. I'm sure he has some thoughts. Cedric is here with me. I'm sure he has some thoughts on some of the issues that you have raised, and I believe he would like to take that further with the next panelist. Over to you, Cedric, and thank you so much, Mrs. Agatha Naji. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Kasaina, for making me feel larger than life. Well, when Madam Agatha was speaking, I was really taken away, and I was just listening, and it felt good to actually be here to be schooled by someone like her dropping her gems. But I'll be moving on to Dr. Erisa Danladi, who is someone I actually hold in high esteem. She's a research-oriented consultant and a strategist with 18 years of experience working with persons living in rural communities and indigenous groups. She has a diverse background when it comes to occupying leadership positions in social development, education, and administrative settings. And she has worked and served in national and regional capacity and sits on several boards. But one of the things I know she is very much proud about, that if I do not state it, I think we would have a fight, is the fact that she is a successful farmer. Try to contact her. She's always in the farm with terrible network, I must state. And she's a community development expert, a gender advocate, facilitator, researcher, multicultural education, and a motivational speaker that is passionate about helping women, persons with disability, youth, and vulnerable households. As you can see, she wears a lot of caps. But the most appealing aspect of her career-wise is the fact that despite having varied certifications and degrees, a PhD in theater art and community development, holding a master's degree in dramatic literature and criticism, and also having a diploma in law, she has thrived continually to develop her interest and her expert in growing the Mother Hen Development Foundation, where she sits as the executive director. I want to thank you for taking out the time to be with us. And the question that will be coming from me is this. I would want us to look at two perspectives to this particular conversation. So you being a resident in an African country, and I know you have partaken and you have shared and taken part in the major challenges that we see and endure in the city. My question to you is, which of these challenges you feel like is the front burner for you? And if you had the superpower to change it, like if you had the ability to just speak words and it happens like that, what would you do differently?
Wow, good afternoon, everyone. Cedric, that was so much. And thank you for saying that I'm a farmer, because in fact, that is for me in it. And then linking it up to your question, over the years with a lot of experience around community development and seeing that people in this community are part of a society. For me, what stood out is the inequality you keep seeing. You have a lot of food insecurity around my community, my city. And that again is not, is something I I always see with a heavy heart going into agriculture. And that's one of the motivation for me to be able to see that women like me who has a lot of challenge accessing farmlands and even being part of the society have a chance to come together as a cluster to be able to secure the future food security of our communities. So for me, standing out so clear as a lot of challenge is inequality, especially when it comes to agriculture. So, and then you have a whole lot of other things in the community, in the society, which if God gives me the might, I could say, oh no, we don't need that. You have a lot of healthcare issues where women, you have a lot of poverty, where you have a lot of our education system. And to crown it all, you have governance or democracy that is not reaching out to carry out, especially the most vulnerable people in the community. So yes, we have a lot of challenge in my city, in my community where I come from. We have a whole lot. But what do I want to see? I want to see a prosperous community. I want to see a secure community. I come from the Northeast. We have a lot of insurgency, and that insurgency trickled down, and we were so deprived of a lot of things, especially as women, especially as the most vulnerable. You find out that a whole lot of things boil down to that. We don't have access. We don't have a say. We don't have a life of our own. We're trying to, as much as we can, to be as resilient as we can. So from my city, this is a very big challenge that I see mostly. And I hope and I pray I have the superpower that I could just stop the insurgents. I would bring out women that are going through a lot of traumatic issues, from losing their husbands, their homes, their children, a lot of vices you see around. And of course, you cannot forget hunger, because we don't even have the farmland to go to. We don't even have access. So you find out that we have a lot of issues around us. And I wish I can be able to say, oh, yes, God, give us this and let's stop this. But yes, this is where we found ourselves, even though we're working hard as a people to see that we are resilient, even in the face of these challenges. So for me, it is a whole lot seeing my community not being secured, seeing us having no food to eat as much as we would love to. Our children are sick around the communities, no good health facility to fall back to. And of course, young people we work with are jobless. We come to the farm most of the time, and you find us on high drugs because we just need to take our head off what is happening around us. This is not even a city, this is a community. This is our village I'm talking about. So you see, from our own end, we are also seeing how we can come together and fight what is before us. From me, this is what I see from my city, from my community. Of course, I see a lot of inequality when it comes to a lot of vices affecting especially women, people with disabilities around. And what crowns it all, when you don't have food to eat, you don't have where to run to, where you have your children all hungry. So for me, food security also stood up, because we need food to survive, and we need even the farms to go to at the end of the day. A lot of things I see in my community, in my city.
Wow, thank you for that. Major thing that stood out for me was the security, both for food and for people, because the insecurity in the Northeast leads to the issue of internally displaced persons that trickles down to create the slums in most urban cities that also lead to more cases of insecurity. And with that level of insecurity, farmers can go to the farm and, then food becomes scarce, and the hunger would lead to other crime rates. Thank you very, very much for your insights. Kasaina, I don't know if you just got fired up with what she said, but I need to cool down. I'll give the mic back to you for a moment.
Cedric, I do understand how you feel. And honestly, that was an emotional roller coaster. And I can see a thread going through. The conversation we're having is about how can we break our barriers, the barriers that exist in urbanizing Africa. And we had Mrs. Agatha Naji talk about the reality of elderly people, the fact that they would like to see green areas. Dr. Erisa has also talked about security, and that is something that speaks to quite a lot of us as Africans, as Nigerians, wherever we may be. So it's very important that these issues are coming out. And when we look at the elderly population, we see or we know that they usually would have old age related ailments, which may cause disability. Dr. Erisa, who works in the rural communities with indigenous women, also mentioned the issue of persons with disability. So that takes us really nicely to our very next speaker. And we're going to be interrogating further the issue of persons with disability. Our next speaker is Aisha Nsantu. She's the founder and executive director of Glaring Future Foundation, an SDGs champion, and a member of many other organizations. Aisha is passionate about being a change maker, a voice for the voiceless, and she believes in the power of marginalized groups. Aisha joins us from Tanzania, and we're having an interesting East Africa meets West Africa conversation where we'll be hearing Aisha's perspectives. So Aisha, if you're here, could you kindly unmute and let us know that you're available for the next question?
Hello, I'm available.
Fantastic, it's great to hear your voice. Aisha, thank you so much for joining us. And I really like your philosophy to take everything that presents itself in life. So that is an optimistic point of view. Thank you very much for sharing that. What are the major challenges that persons with disabilities go through in cities? And what role do local governments and community leadership currently play in the city where you live to ensure that social infrastructure is provided for the ease of residents, especially persons with disability? And I have a follow-up question to that. So the first is the major challenges and what role the government and community leaders are currently playing. And then the second is, what better role do you think they can play in ensuring that urban infrastructure is accessible to all citizens, especially persons with disabilities and all other minority groups? Would love to hear what your views are on this. Over to you, Aisha.
Thank you so much. My name is Aisha Nsantu from Tanzania. I'm the executive director of Growing Future Foundation, an NGO which deals with empowering special groups in social and economic aspects. But also I should declare that I'm one of the people who are having disabilities. But without wasting any other time, I'd like to go straight to my presentation, where first of all, we should assess the challenges that people with disabilities face in the cities. As we all know, people with disabilities face a lot of issues, but maybe a few of them, which I can capture right now, include stigma, like the social isolations. We still have the negative social cultural norms, whereby some people tend to see disability as a curse. So it's not supposed to be, a person with disability is not supposed to live in the societies. But also we have issues like lack of inclusive public transport. As you know, some of the vehicles that we normally use are not inclusive, that it's so hard for a person with disability to use them. But also we have inaccessible buildings. There are a lot of tall buildings in our cities, but very few of them you can find that they have elevators, but even some of them lack even ramps. So those people with disabilities who are using wheelchairs, it's hard for them to access. Another issue is inadequate healthcare. As you know, for instance, I can take an example of a deaf person when he or she visits a doctor, and unfortunately, you might find that doctor isn't aware of the sign language, so they need an interpreter to be as their intermediate person. And due to this, you can see that they lack their right to privacy. That means the interpreter will know what the deaf is suffering from and all that. But also we have lack of assistive devices and technologies. And lastly, we have difficulty in finding employment, but also there are very few education opportunities to people with disabilities. And so far, so good in Tanzania local government. One of the roles that they play is to ensure that they are responsible for planning, implementing, but also maintaining social services. These social services include schools, hospitals, but also water systems. And their second role is to make sure that these social services are accessible to all people, regardless of their disability, their ethnic groups, and gender, and other issues. But also, according to me, if you ask me what roles I can see they can be played to ensure that all people access to make sure that we have urban infrastructure which is accessible to all groups. One of them is, I can say that the local governments and the country government at large can also conduct regular assessments of this infrastructure, but also maintaining and ensuring that all people can access them. Another issue is like involving people with disabilities, women, youth, and other people from marginalized groups in planning, but also implementation of the infrastructure projects. As we all know, there is this common saying which says nothing for us without us. So when they'll be included, I'm pretty sure they'll participate fully, but also make sure that everything goes well to all these groups. Another issue is providing training and resources to city planners and engineers to make sure that even if it's a two-story buildings, then it should be accessible to all, especially people with disabilities. But also we should check on the issue of creating policies and regulations that require all infrastructure to be accessible. Like it should be a law, maybe an act, whereby it's a must to have elevators, ramps, and all other accessible systems in our infrastructure. Another issue that I've seen is that we can raise awareness to the community or the public at large about infrastructure, but also importance of accessibility of this infrastructure to people with disabilities. So as we can remove the negative social cultural norms to especially which relies to people with disabilities. And another issue I can see, maybe we are facing, like most of the African countries, we are facing lack of finance. So perhaps the authorities concerned with these issues can allocate enough funds to ensure that the infrastructures are friendly to be used by also people with disabilities. And lastly, but not least, I can say like we should promote employment opportunities and education opportunities to people with disabilities. For instance, I was thinking, what if 30% of all employees should be people with disabilities, meaning that in every 10 employees, 3 people should be people with disabilities. And lastly, I can also say that we should include, or we should create partnership with
Okay, thank you so much, Aisha. I don't know if you work at your end, but I can't seem to hear you anymore. But I'm sure everybody is excited with all of the wishes that you have put into the universe. I believe that we all know what Aisha would do when she has a magic wand. Thank you so much for sharing all of that and for sharing the true picture of what persons with disabilities go through in your community in Tanzania, which I believe is not much different from our reality in Nigeria. Over to you, Cedric. Thank you so much, Aisha.
Yeah, thank you. So the next person I would be engaging with is Sharifa. She's a young entrepreneur who is involved in selling of eggs at Sanawari Hayward in Arusha, CC. She holds an SSC certification from Ikisame Secondary School at Monduli District in Arusha region. She is a right holder under the Adolescent Girls and Young Women project that was done by Okwa New Generation True Girls Voice Project in Tanzania. So she received sexual reproductive health right awareness, business training, and more economic strengthening support. It's really nice to have you here. And the question that I would love to ask, which I hope we could do, which I hope that we could tackle, let's say in 3 minutes or less, is this.
I'd like to say that I am enjoying my time with
women and children are more prone to social exclusion. So in your own personal experience, can you tell us why this is the case and how best do you think we could involve this group into all parts of the movement as urbanization is just about structures but the people? Thank you very much.
Yeah, so far.
Sharif, are you there?
Just that Sharifa is having the question being translated into Swahili, so that you can respond. So we'll just hold on for the interpreter to do the question.
Wanahusika zaidi katika.
Apologies, could I just quickly pause, Salamani, just to check if you can improve your sound a little bit.
Okay.
We are hearing a little bit of a buffer coming out. Maybe something is rubbing on your mic.
Hello.
It sounds a little bit better now.
Kama ni mjasiriamali, wanawake na watoto zaidi kutengwa na jamii. Katika uzoefu wako, kwa nini inajitokeza changamoto hii na kwa hali gani ambavyo labda tungeweza kuwashirikisha wanawake na watoto katika uboreshaji wa miji na kuendeleza miji pia? Karibu sana Aisha. I think for this opportunity, and I'm trying. Let me try to highlight the community which is surrounding with our community, with all the kids and children. As well, in previous months, there were some women and some children. They were just staying home. If they're not being given, any opportunity, they're not being forwarded to the sharing their voice, or maybe their perception, as well as the project of voice. It really helps the women and children as well as a part of the community. I do go out and really trying to motivate, try to inspire my fellow women. As I am a woman as well, the women and children should be having opportunity to speak and to have out their opinion and suggestion, and they should be kept genuine as well. Women, they are really having a very good ability to give their views and perspective in development of the community. In the previous time, to give our perspective, ideas, input on the given issues. It was open because we didn't have the opportunity to discuss various issues happening. This was a part of the community which I'm belonging. The education part of reproduction, it really helps a woman to understand herself and to know her dignity. We as women, we really are.
Um,
Hello, and thank you so much for the conversation. We can't seem to hear the conversation. So we do appreciate what you are. And thank you so much for bringing out valid points that women need at the table, and that there should be opportunities for women's voices to count. Thank you so much, Sharifa, for sharing your point of view. And thank you to the Swahili interpreter. We really appreciate that. And with this, we have come to the end of the conversation that we're currently having. Thank you so much for being here and for being a huge part of this. Over to you, Cedric. My name is Kasena, and I'm very happy to be here. Over to you, Cedric. Thanks for being here all.
Yeah, thank you, every person on the panelists that took out time to be here. And for the listeners, yes, we see you all. Keep using the chat function and dropping your own little nuggets as regards to the conversation that is going on. So I would be leaving you in good hands, and this may be the last you see of my face, and I hope to connect with everybody in some other time and another space. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kasina and Cedric, and thank you for all the speakers that have just shared their experiences and the barriers they face. I think I picked 3 key things. We need to be more deliberate in including elderly people, in infrastructure, PW, people with disability also, and particularly, I find it quite interesting that you go to the hospital and there's no interpreter, so you can't even talk to the healthcare worker on what health challenges you are facing. I mean, this really calls for an urgent attention, and so thank you all for sharing all of that. We'd also like to hear from each and every one. We'll be sharing a poll right away. A link will be dropped in the chat function, and please just participate in the poll. Click on the link, and it will take you to a Mentimeter. Jokudu, can you please put the link on the chat?
Yes, apologies. I'm about to quickly share it, so I don't want to say to just one person, but to everyone in the room. There you go.
All right, then. So that's the link. Please click on the link and use the code. The code is 47341663, and just share with us what are the different barriers in your city that you think is hindering equity and inclusion. So we do this in the next 2 minutes, and we want to hear from each and every one. Let's know what are the different barriers you see in your city that hinder equity and inclusion. And just peradventure you're not able to click into Mentimeter, please, you can also use the chat function and let us know.
You're mute, Christy. You're mute.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, so let us know any other barriers you see in your city. Quite a number have been mentioned today. Thank you so much. We have non-accessible public transportation system, lack of affordable housing, gender stereotype at workplace amongst women. I like that. Lack of infrastructure, unequal access to education, government insensitive to respect the norms and values of indigenous people, lack of quality, inclusive education, gender-based violence, very important. Please keep the poll coming, and we would quickly share a video where we have quite a number of our community in Nigeria and Tanzania also share different challenges they face.
My name is Zakia Ismail Sokoro. I come from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, one of the biggest cities in Tanzania. Dar es Salaam, it is facing a numerous number of problems such as a poor sewage system, which is caused by improper planning, but as well as poor infrastructure, which is linked to traffic jam in Tanzania.
My name is Emmanuel Dajal, representing Jos City from Plateau State. I want a city whereby there will be access to potable water for everyone, not only in the city of Jos, but at the border settlements of the city also. Thank you.
My name is Eli Chansa, and I am from Arusha, Tanzania. Arusha is the center of Africa, well known for coexistence, wild animals and human beings, in reference to Ngorongoro National Park. I would love that we enhance that instead of separating it, instead of ruling out the people who've been coexisting since immemorial with wild animals.
Hi, my name is Eunice Enoch, and I represent Gishiri community here in FCT Abuja. I want a well-planned city where low-income earners like me will be able to afford housing.
Hey, my name is Maria Andrea Key from Mwanza. What I wish for Mwanza to be Mwanza as it is. Mwanza, everybody hears and wishes to be there. Is proper regional planning. Most of places are slums.
My name is John Charles Ajimasu. I rep Bauchi City. What I want to see in my city is proper waste disposal.
Hello, my name is Gabriel. I come from Dar es Salaam. One of the biggest problems in our city is there is no drainage system.
Hi, my name is Caroline Viola. I'm representing Lagos City. I want a city where everyone will have access to electricity.
You know, and the interesting thing with all of these barriers that have been spoken about today, and even the video, these are basic things that we think anybody and every member of any community should have access to. So it's interesting that we are bringing in all of these challenges we face. The next session, we'll be talking about exploring solutions to these barriers and how can we move from this place that we are. We've mentioned the cities that we want. How can we get closer to those cities that we want? What do we need to do as individual, as a community? And to lead that particular discussion today, I'll be calling in Inwayi Bufwe Adeizi Ugweche. She will kill me for crucifying her name. I've been practicing actually. Adeizi is a Prince 2 certified project management specialist with over 15 years of experience strategically managing and executing projects worth over $75 million within the healthcare, education, tech, gender, and justice sector. You're welcome, Adeizi. And of course, she's the founder and CEO of DYGL, Do Your Great Life Africa.
Thank you, Christy. You really tried with the name. So A for efforts. Thank you, everyone. Good to see everyone. I'm super excited for this second panel discussion. I was just listening to Cedric and Cassiana in the first round, and I was already getting excited seeing things that they were unsurfacing when it comes to the barriers around urbanization in Africa. So I'm ready for us to dig deeper. I think that's the theme also for me. So I'll go into the first panelist introduction. I'm really excited. We have 4 really strong panelists. Our first one is Mr. Hamzat Lawal, also known as Hamzi. And Hamzi is a global citizen, community organizer, and an award-winning advocate and humanitarian who has successfully led grassroots campaigns in over 40 African countries with over 15 years of practical experience in the nonprofit sector and specialties in practical issues in relation to climate change, open data, advocacy campaigns, and development policies as it affects rural and deprived grassroots communities. Hamzi is also the founder of Follow the Money, a homegrown Pan-African grassroots data-driven initiative currently in 10 African countries and one of the fastest growing movements that engages citizens and leads a team of technology and innovation-driven campaigners to amplify voices of marginalized communities. To do what? To promote accountability as it affects utilization of public funds, focusing on specific communities across Africa. I also want to note that Hamzi is currently the chief executive of Connected Development, known as CODE, an organization that was founded and under his leadership, CODE won the One Africa 2016 award, which recognizes, rewards, and advances the exceptional work of Africa-based organizations that are dedicated to helping the continent achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. I'll stop here, but as you can see, there's so much more to say about Hamzi. I just want to quickly note as a fun fact that I had the joy of being able to moderate a former panel that Hamzi was on 3 years ago. He honored a request that I had, and he really spoke to us that time about leadership and what it means to lead against all odds. Certain wisdom pearls that he shared are still with me till today. I like taking notes, so I made sure to take notes. So hello, can you hear me? I think my internet knocked out a bit. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. The joys of tech. Okay, so thank you so much, Hamzi. It's good to have you on the panel. I'd like to shoot the first question your way. So I know during the first, thank you so much. So during the first panel discussion, we heard a lot about the barriers that there are when it comes to urbanizing Africa. So several things were highlighted: inequality, ineffective and inadequate healthcare, inaccessible public transport systems for those with disabilities, and so many more things. So I want to specifically ask you, when it comes to solutions and what we can do to offset these barriers, when it comes to inequality specifically, how do you think we can actually approach minimizing that barrier and ensuring that urbanizing Africa includes all people and is fair across the board? Considering and keeping in mind that it might not look the same as other developed countries and other developed continents.
Well, thank you for having me. I think best is to look at rapid population growth. You see, we're one of the fastest growing continents in the world, and Nigeria alone have over 200 million people. So there's a lot of pressure that we're putting on both rural and urban areas, and I think it's important to provide adequate housing and infrastructure and services that are inclusive. But first, we must look at how we reduce our rapid growth in terms of population. Secondly, is informal settlement. You see, a lot of time we talk about urban, but what happened to the informal settlement? And, you know, a significant proportion of Africa is, you know, when you look at it, it's urban population, we live in informal settlement, even before, so from rural to informal settlement before you even come to urban settlement. So again, to be inclusive, we need to look at this informal settlement. Limited resources. Yes, many African countries, GDP per capita is low. And what we've also seen that has increased the gap of inequalities, we have corrupt politicians who work with private sector to inflate costs, you know, embezzle and mismanage public resources. Now there's weak governance and, you know, these weak governance frameworks, because this must be driven first by policy. Because if you don't have policy, then you can't plan and you cannot budget. But we have weak governance structure where corruption has taken the order of the day. And you know, this has also impacted poor planning and implementation of policies that regulate inclusive growth. Climate change. Climate change is a big factor. You know, before now, we think climate change only affects, you know, rural community. Now, informal settlement, urban cities and centers have been greatly impacted, you know, by the effect of climate change. And migration, you know, when you look at, in Nigerian context, when you look at insecurity, for instance, it has led to rural-urban migration. People want to stay in cities where it's safe. Today, Abuja is overcrowded, Lagos is, you know. So I think, in concluding my talk, first is to inform citizens, because we need to have a behavioral change mindset, because it will take a while if citizens are not informed and educated. And I think, you know, if we have an informed citizen that engage, then government would have no option that ensure accountability and engagement, and also budget and releases that ensure that, you know, we can have an inclusive society, both informal, rural, and even urban.
Thank you, Hamzi. Really good points made. I really love that you mentioned informal settlements and making sure that we don't forget that. I also really like that you also mentioned considering the budget. And in other words, for me, that means putting money where our mouth is, making sure that our governance structures are set up in a way that policies are actually inclusive and money is also going to what we are trying to achieve with urbanization. So thank you so much. Really, really valid points. And now I'll move to our second panelist for the next question. First, I'd love to introduce him and explain a bit about the work that he's already doing. So secondly, we have Mr. Hatibu Jumbe, and Hatibu is the co-founder and CEO of Afri Tanzania Volunteers for Change, also known as AVC in Tanzania. Afri Tanzania Volunteers for Change is a youth-led volunteer organization designed to encourage and further community development in Tanzania by empowering youth through volunteer work. through volunteer work. So Hatibu is also the founder and CEO of ScholarMate, an EdTech home education platform enabling online engagement between tutors and students at home. Hatibu has worked with organizations such as Canada World Youth as project supervisor, AIESEC Sweden as the corporate and sponsorship manager, and Cape Flats YMCA as a peer educator. He has also served as a reader committee of the applications for the 2016 Mandela Washington Fellowship for Young African Leaders Program, and that was in 2015. Hatibu has a great experience in business model innovation research, and he holds an MSc in Business Admin Strategy and Management in International Organizations from LIU Sweden. Another accomplished panelist. Welcome, Hatibu. It's good to have you.
Thank you very much. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And as you said, I have been working for several organizations, and now I'm executive director of AVC Tanzania. We work to empower children and women and youth to mitigate the problem of poverty, gender inequality, and education in Tanzania. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us. So I'll shoot the next question your way. And this question is going to be about your experience working with youths in communities. So already we know that in Africa, the youth population is our most growing population, and we have an abundance of youth. It's constantly being said. So how do you believe we can stir the youth to drive community action that demands for inclusion of urban slums in urbanization policies and practices, especially based on your background and work with youth?
Okay, thank you very much for the nice question. So my suggestion to overcome this challenge, so I think we can come up with several approaches to strike youth and encourage them to demand inclusion. So firstly, I will suggest to empower them with the skills and the resources for active participation in community action. This is through training, initiated training program on leadership, community organizing, project management, and the advocacy technique. And I believe this it can enable them to address a specific needs for urban slum, and help them to engage with the policymaker and the stakeholder for co-designing various solutions for inclusive urbanization. As we see, there is a lot of challenge and the youth are not included in policy formulation. Second, I would to support youth-led grassroots organization. This is by support their idea and help them to establish self-sustained community projects, such as a skill building workshop. Also, we should provide them with like fund and mentorship, entrepreneurship, and managerial skills. I found this is very, very essential because it is important because it can enable them to implement innovative projects and community-driven solution that will tackle the challenge faced by urban slums. For instance, based on my experience, I had the opportunity to conduct research with the Wonder Workshop in Dar es Salaam, which collapsed in October 2017. The organization comprised of over 30 women and men living with disability, with most being a victim of polio. They use it to recycle. They use recycled scrap metal to decorate public places and the building. The primary reason for their failure is they lack their self-sustained business model, and they lack, can say, entrepreneurship and the managerial skills. So if we enable the youth to youth organization to acquire entrepreneurship and the managerial skills, it is very essential for them to be active, participate in urbanization. Also, think we can mobilize youth to advocate for policy change that will promote inclusive urbanization. This can be through active participation in decision-making process and policy discussion from local to regional to national level. This can ensure the inclusion of slum community in urban development planning. For instance, in 2014, we conducted a research in Dar es Salaam slum communities, focusing on children with disability and their struggles. The study revealed that these children were often kept indoors, lacking access to basic human rights like education and physical therapy care. I'm not complaining, but I just want to raise a concern. And if I had a chance to engage with the policymaker directly, my primary concern would be the establishment of disability care centers in the slum community. I believe they would allow the community to have on-site physical therapists who could help multiple families with similar physical disabilities to afford daily therapy sessions. The absence of such facilities had led to a significant number of children transforming from temporary disability to permanent one. So that is very serious issue that I think every city they should take it into account. Last but not least, we can provide a platform for youth to voice their concern and idea, like organizing public forums, debates, and conference where they can express their perspective on urbanization policies. So this is my contribution for now. Thank you for a kind attention.
Thank you, Hatibu. Really great contributions. I want to highlight two of the things you said that really stood out to me. The first one is mobilizing the youth to actually participate in policies, development of policies for urban planning. It's so important because, again, we're talking about inclusion. So that's what it looks like. The actual manifestation of inclusion, having people participate that are part of the marginalized groups. So thank you for mentioning that. It's really key. And then I also love what you mentioned about physical therapy care centers in slum communities. Very, very important. And I think that's also another way to show what inclusion looks like for people with disabilities. So thank you so much. We appreciate that. Okay, so I'd love to go to our third, thank you. I'd love to go to our third panelist, and we have Miss Rita Ezenwa Okoro. And so Rita is a thought leader, creative culturist, performance activist, and communications expert who believes in the creative arts as a force for human development. Her visionary leadership shines as the founder of the UN and BMW Group's Intercultural Innovation Award-winning Street Project Foundation. This organization implements inclusive creative arts programs for at-risk youth in Africa. Rita is also the executive director of the Global Play Brigade, a movement that uses play to soften borders and barriers between people across the globe. She is also a Mandela Washington Fellow, recipient of the Lagos State Award of Excellence in Youth Development and Entrepreneurship Development, a 3-time Global Fellow of the International Society of the Performing Arts, and now the first Nigerian to serve on the board of that same International Society of the Performing Arts, an approximately 75-year-old prestigious organization. I'll stop here. There's more to share, but I'll just stop here for now. Thank you so much, Rita, and welcome. We're happy to have you.
Thank you for having me, Adeze. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. So I'll turn the next question to you, and let's talk a little bit here about culture. So we know that culture is the way of life when it comes to how we define ourselves as Africans. And that includes things like arts. It includes things like our clothing, our music, our food, sports even. So when we think about that and we consider the fact that it looks like we're losing a bit of our cultural essence as we move forward in urbanizing Africa, and as we move forward into what looks to be more Western ways of urbanizing our cities, how do you think we can break this barrier? I see you rolling your eyes, so it looks like you've experienced that as well, that same sentiment. So how do you think we can break this barrier and include more of our cultural heritage at the center of urbanizing our cities in Africa?
Thank you for that question, Adeze. I actually feel very differently. I really think that our young people have been very resilient with their arts and with culture. We must accept the fact that the world continues to change. And for many years prior to now, yes, we've been influenced by the Western culture. I'm currently in New York, and every street that I've worked into and every metro and train station I've worked into, all I've been listening to is Afro music, Afrobeat music. And so things are changing. And so I'm going to speak from a positive slant here. Most recently, we watched how Hilda Bassi decided to take on the Guinness Book of Records and break the record of one who's been the longest person to cook for over 100 hours. It speaks to the resilience of our young people. To further think about, ideas and solutions on how to better our cities and our communities, I'd like to read an excerpt from my book that says, art enables us to find ourselves and lose ourselves simultaneously. This quote is by Thomas Merton. Hence, why personally I'm very passionate, and you would hear from my voice, that I do not believe that we can have vibrant cities without art at the center, at the core. And what's happening in Africa is there is limited funding and investment in the infrastructure for the arts. So I call you all to imagine with me. Imagine that every local government in every state, in every country in Africa has creative arts centers for our young people to fully and truly express themselves and immerse themselves. That's one. The second thing I'd like to talk about is language. And it also falls into even our education. Now, some of the fast growing countries of the world, like China, teach in their indigenous languages. And we know that in Africa, we have many of the world's intelligent and extremely progressive people. But we are limited by the imperialistic demands of the English language. And so we definitely have to find ways in which we can learn, integrate, and pass on our oral traditions in the language that, we all speak. A lot of us have lost that. And if we lose language, we lose a part of ourselves, like you have spoken about. A lot of our young people don't speak their indigenous languages. Another thing I'd like us to imagine might sound idealistic, but can we actually imagine an Africa that is a country? Why do I say this? The borders across Africa is unbecoming. How do we thrive? How do our cities thrive when we are trying to grow in isolation in our various countries and can hardly even visit each other and experience the culture and the arts of people who are at our backyard? And so I think that that's very, very critical. I'm also a proponent of play and performance for human development and softening our borders. And we have different forms of play in Africa that can unite us, where our leaders can come together, where our peoples can come together and we can thrive. By and large, what I'm saying is that the creative arts needs to be at the core and the center of the development of our urban cities for us to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. And I love that you first of all kicked off by saying you don't actually share the same sentiments. We're actually on a good path. We just need to improve. So thank you for sharing that. I also love your mention of creative arts centers in our communities. That would be a big game changer to have that, like you said, from the grassroots level all the way to national for each country. And then also being able to see our continent as a country. That hit me when you said that. Because even like you mentioned, being able to just visit each other is a struggle many times, but that's a discussion for a different day. So yes, I'm happy that you've mentioned all these points, very valid. I've also taken notes, so thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Adesi.
Okay, you're very welcome. So we'll now move on to our fourth panelist for the next question. And then that is Dr. Chike. So Dr. Chike, I hope you're here and can hear us.
Finally, I made it back. I found my way back.
Good to have you back. It's okay, the joys of tech. I also experienced it a little earlier.
Thank you, Adese.
Okay, you're welcome. So we have Dr. Chike, who is a disruptive innovator and a politician, as well as a media and events consultant. Dr. Chike was the former Nigerian coordinator at the CNN Multi-Choice African Journalists of the Year Awards, alongside providing both commercial and editorial content for CNN and Al Jazeera. As a paraplegic from spinal cord injuries due to a freak car crash in December 2006, Dr. Chike is a champion of change and an alumnus of the prestigious Harvard Kennedy School of Government Leadership in the 21st Century, Chaos, Conflict, and Courage program. That was in 2010, and also an alumnus from Expanding Impact program in 2011 and Leadership, Organizing, and Action program in 2012. He was the Deputy National Chairman, Strategy, Innovation, and Change in ADC, a Nigerian political party, with responsibilities of churning out new and innovative policies for the party. He also aspired for the seat of the Office of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to become the first ever aspirant for president with a disability. Dr. Chike is the founder and chief responsibility officer for ability rehabilitation at the Center for Ability Rehabilitation and Empowerment here, who have advocated for policy changes in the aviation sector and political space for the betterment of the disability community in Nigeria. Welcome, Dr. Chike. I was supposed to cut this down, but I just thought I had to keep going. So welcome. Good to have you on our panel.
Thank you, Adese. Something you talk about, I don't think it's me you're talking about, because I'm wondering if it's this small me. Hi, beautiful sister Rita. It's good to see you. I love New York. I miss New York. And absolutely, you're on point with all of you said. And it brings me back to my topic, urbanization. I've lived and worked in New York to New Jersey, from Kennedy School and Boston. And I know how it is, all the metro, everything. You can get around in New York, without any assistance. The buses, the metro, everything works for persons with disabilities. That's the kind of Africa I'm looking at. Even if I compare New York is to where Aisha, my sister, in the first session was talking about the challenges of persons with disabilities in Africa, it's horrible. But anyway, what can we persons with disabilities do in this situation? We can do so much. The first thing I think we should do, which is what I have been doing, is advocate for rights that will enhance accessibility. We can work with other NGOs and collaborate with as much people as we can, in enhancing the accessibility, because this is critical to us persons with disabilities. We have to lobby for better infrastructures. Moving around in Nigeria is horrible. You guys know my story, how I was discriminated against, by an airline in Nigeria, thanks to Voice, which is why I'm here. Voice provided that platform. Today, the story is no more the same. At least there's so much inclusion in the aviation sector, and so much has been happening. We can only get better. The second thing I think we should do as much as possible is to promote inclusive policies. In the course of advocating for change in the aviation sector, we were able to change the policies, prevailed upon the policy makers and the policy implementers. We took our case to the National Assembly. Our matter was read on the floor of the House of Assembly, and that escalated to the implementers, NCAA, the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority in Nigeria, Federal Airports Authority in Nigeria. IJ was there with us. That's Mrs. Ijoma Okwo. She can bear testimony to how we were received by the MD of FAN, the former MD of FAN. And we saw a lot of changes. So we can, as a matter of fact, you won't believe that when we related with the NCAA, we found out that the laws were already there. It's just that it was not being implemented. So we only got them to change the laws. At least today in Nigeria, the issues of discrimination against persons with disabilities has so much reduced. We don't have to pay for it. So we need to really work on the policy makers and policy implementers. The third thing I think we should do as a matter of urgency is enhancing the skills and capacities of persons with disabilities. We must acquire the relevant education and vocational training, along and sharpen our digital literacy skills. The level of literacy in Africa for PWDs is very low. We need to raise the bar. We need to take this up, because this is where we are also. Because when you come into an urban center, communication and all that, how can you work without your phones, without your laptops and the internet and all that? We need to know and learn, put our best foot forward, learn. The fourth thing I think we should do is economic empowerment for persons with disabilities. Disability is a known on its own. We're already at the bottom of the ladder. Added to poverty is a double jeopardy. If you are a woman, it's a triple jeopardy. You know what I mean? So we need to make sure that we enhance our economic empowerment. We're doing that in care. We train people, we give them startup packs, we partner with a lot of people. Because as a matter of fact, if you listen recently, we've been advocating for inclusion of persons with disabilities in the incoming cabinet for the, we don't want to operate at the level of S's and P's. We want to have ministers with disabilities who will go to Federal Executive Council meetings. You see, this way, if we do inclusion, we recover and, we get back to the lost 15% of our gross domestic product. Remember that if you exclude persons with disabilities, you're excluding 15% of your population. And if you're able to bring them back in, you will gain 15% of that lost population. The fifth thing we should do is to promote social inclusion. Just like I said earlier, in New York, everything works out well there. If you go to events, everywhere is accessible. I've attended, I've been to the, what's it called now? Rita, is it the Apollo? Everywhere is, there's a train station right by you, right there. You can attend and go to watch events. You don't matter whether you're on a wheelchair and all that, whether you're deaf or dumb, deaf or hearing impaired, you can survive in an urban center. So we need to promote social inclusion, which means we have to work with events planners, events managers, events organizers, owners of events venues, NGOs and all that, so that we can focus on advancing disability rights. This way PWDs will become agents of change who want to build inclusive societies. The sixth and final thing I want to talk about is we need to monitor implementation to safeguard our rights. Because this is important that persons with disabilities, we have to see how these things are being done. Because they pay lip service to these things, nothing about us without us, somebody had mentioned earlier. And if we're able to monitor and evaluate what is going on, we will be able to ensure that our accessibility standards are high, and we also our rights are, that our rights are well preserved. We can do so much. With these 6 points that I've just mentioned, I think it will help us in contributing towards shaping the organization of PWDs in Nigeria and Africa. We need to break down these barriers, like you said, and we need to make sure that our inclusion is in full. There's so much work to do, but I think with these 6 things that I just mentioned, we can actually push these numbers, and relate more with the people, because you see, we have to increase the numbers of those who are empathetic to our cause as against those who are sympathetic to us, because we are not beggars. We are not beggars, and I don't want to see us as beggars. I think we need to have best foot forward. Whenever I speak, I say I want to ride on existing protocol. Then I found out that that's kind of derogatory. So I say I ride along existing protocols, But why do I do so? People don't relate with me from the, I don't see where I'm being related with on the basis of sympathy. They don't see my disability. I'm not even a person with disability, come to think of it. I don't see myself as one, I just have an impairment, and it's just a limitation. I can do everything another person does. And I think that's when we should come out boldly to speak. we should not speak and advocate as we're not beggars. I keep saying that persons with disabilities have a right like every other person in society. And with these few points of mine, I hope I've been able to convince.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Chike. Thank you so much. Very valid points. Yes, 6 in number that we noted down and kept close to heart. So thank you so much. We appreciate you. I just want to say
I've actually shared it with I've shared it with Christy, and I'm sure the document can go around.
Perfect. Thank you. I'd love to say that as you were speaking, I felt what you said connects to what Habitu said earlier, what Rita just said recently. Habitu talked about skills and the importance of entrepreneurial and management skills. And then you also mentioned the importance of skills, especially when it comes to digital skills for those with disability. Rita also mentioned the importance of arts enabling us to find and lose ourselves at the same time. And you also highly referenced the train system in New York and how that actually works, a way to lose ourselves and maybe gain something fresh. So thank you. I appreciate you a lot. And what I'll do now is turn us over to Q&A because we're limited on time. I would love to go into more one-on-ones with each of you, but I'd like to give the audience a chance to ask any questions they have, if there are 1 or 2 questions. If anyone has a question, please feel free to raise your hand. Otherwise, I'll just use the next few moments looking through the chats to see if there's anything you've dropped here. So any questions, please feel free to raise your hand. I see a hand raised. Chukwuemeka, please go right ahead with your question and who you're directing it to.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and thank you to all the presenters. I need a clarification. I'm a bit confused sometimes when I hear this social inclusion. I understand the sentiments around it, but I really want to ask, should it be more about ability, more about merit and your ability to perform? The last speaker, Chike, that spoke, I can tell you for free, all the things he did with CNN and Al Jazeera was not based on his challenges, absolutely not, but based on his brilliance. So I hear talk about including young people, including youth, including women and all. I understand all of those sentiments, but should we rather create environments where people can excel in the work they do? So for instance, we're talking about people living with disability. If we have the right infrastructure in our economy, in education, in all spheres, for them to thrive and be themselves, should that be the focus, or should it be bring them into, for instance, the cabinet and let them become ministers? And that applies to women, that applies to older people, that applies to across. So what should be our immediate focus? And how does that then dislodge the discussions on social inclusion? I just want clarification on this. Like I said, I don't have any issues with it, but I just want clarification, because my point, or my thinking rather, would be that let's create a fair ground for everyone to operate and thrive, irrespective of gender, irrespective of physical disability, irrespective of whatever, as against, I think they call it tokenism, whatever you call it, I can't remember, but as against that. I'd like Chike to actually address that here. Thank you.
All right. Emeka, thanks so much for that. The first question is, where is the work to be done? And if we know the work to be done, you have identified the work to be done. The question now is, who should do the work? And I think the policymakers should do the work. My take is that we should be in the Federal Executive Council. If you have women sitting every Wednesday deciding what is happening in the ministerial cabinet, if you have persons with disabilities, if you have the elderly, if you have everybody sitting right in the center of power, every other thing that you want will be taken care of. When Aisha spoke earlier, she spoke about culture. The same thing is pervades in the whole of Africa, where we see disabilities, for example, as a curse. But if you see one of the best persons deciding the affairs of a nation inside the Federal Executive Council, not as a minister of disability, but perhaps minister of, take me now, you may be minister of information. Of course, you can see the capacity that I'll bring there. It will no more be about my ability, my person being a person with disability, to be back, my capacity as a media person. So the first things we need to do is to get governance to accept that there must be inclusion. That way we take care of the SDGs. Nobody will be left behind, because that is where the decisions are made. Once that is done, it cascades down, and you'll see that everybody begins to follow and toe the path, follow in line. Because everybody has been doing their own part. I know how I fought event centers here in Abuja to make Hilton, for example, the Sheraton, now they bear a new name. I know how I fought them to make sure that we had inclusion, parking spaces, and all the accessibility needs that we wanted, we have. So it's one thing to talk to the implementers down the line, private sector and the people who do the work every day. But I think it's more important that we talk to them at the top in governance, because
Chike, sorry to interrupt. I get the point. But my point is this. Let's take Nigeria, a peculiar situation, as an example. One of our regions, it is reported, is the poverty capital of the world. And it is this same region of ours that has produced, talking about inclusion in politics and governance, it is still the same region that has possibly produced the highest number of, when I mean the highest number as a region, Nigeria divided into North and South. So that region has produced more presidents, more people in government than the other region. And yet they are the capital, poverty of the world. Now, so that's my point. So should we create environment for people, like you said, you went to all these hotels you mentioned, you advocated, and they changed. Now, you don't have to be someone living with a disability to do that advocacy. And I'm saying, do we create that level where people are enlightened enough to fight for themselves, irrespective of gender or physical disability and the rest of it? Or do we just, and I'm saying this to say, my concern is this. I don't want us to also get to a point where, for instance, we are doing a cabinet and okay, maybe we say, okay, let's give 3 slots to people who are physically, challenged. And I go and bring one village man from one of my brothers, and we just use it. And I just count the numbers. And we say, okay, put 4 women. I go and bring 2 people from my fellowship. We put 4 women. We count the numbers. People that don't have the competence. And at the end of the day, I will stand and tell you that I have 4 people who are physically challenged. I have 5 people who are women in my cabinet. So it is social inclusion. And I'm saying, no, it's not social inclusion. So how do we balance that? That's my concern. Or else,
okay,
this. And then, can I chip in something, Chike? Sorry.
Thank you so much, everyone. Miss Ijoma, okay, please, if you can go ahead, because I'd like to say that our time is a bit limited. I'd love for us to take this discussion offline, because it's a valid question to ask.
It would linger for so long and probably defeat why we are here. I hear you, I see you, Emeka, but I'd like to share a couple of scenarios with you. You are an Igbo man, and probably would like to ask, why do we clamor for an Igbo to be a president? It's not going to change everything. Why do we clamor for more opportunities for the Blacks in the United States? Why do we clamor for more attention to PWDs, to women? These people that we feel have these qualifications, how did they get there? They got there because they've been in the space. These other people lack this experience, this expertise, because they haven't been in the space. That's one example. But we cannot underestimate the importance of the work we do around inclusion. When we say people have been left behind, when we say voices haven't been heard, it is true. You can check the facts, and how we do that differs within the different spaces that we find ourselves. But I strongly believe that we need to do that. Call it quota system, call it whatever. You can only achieve justice when it's clear, when it's glaring that it's been done. Okay, I know these things are abused, but I can tell you this is a conversation, an argument that has been going on for ages, and the rate of inclusion we've achieved so far is because we've been deliberate about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ijoma. And just to say that it's clear that there's passion around this conversation. I see even more hands raised. So I'd love for us to just commit to continuing this conversation offline. I don't want to lose it just because this particular session is about to wrap up. So please, let's do our best to get connected, stay in touch, and then also keep the conversation going on. I'll check and see if we can share some contacts after this. Thank you, everyone.
Let me just quickly one sentence for my brother Emeka. It's
Okay,
a chicken and
one
an
sentence.
Egg situation. Yeah,
one
it's a
sentence.
Chicken and an egg situation. Put your best foot forward. So within the community of praxis, pick the best amongst them. I was selected, experience too. I was brought into shopping because of my capacity, and I delivered. That's why you have the railway project. I delivered the 25-year master plan for railway that is still ongoing. That's what we're talking about. Nobody knew I was a person with disability.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all so much for, I mean, we obviously need to take this conversation forward, and this shows this is a, this is something we need to talk, have more space to talk about. Thank you all so much for all the speakers. It was quite insightful. I mean, I literally was just jotting my way through the discussion. Thank you so much, everyone. And we also want to give an opportunity to everyone to share your solution, solutions you think we can employ to break barriers that have been mentioned here today. So we'll be going to within a quick poll. Mentimeter should be in the chats. Please click in, use the code and share what you think are solutions we can employ. One word. Yeah, so in one word, what solutions can we employ to break the barriers in urbanizing Africa? And we have a couple of answers already. Please, if you have not had a chance to participate in the poll, quickly do so. All right, so we see how consistent most of the answers we have here, what we have heard earlier today. It really has been an interesting conversation. And to close today's session, I would like to call on Ijoma. Ijoma, is still with us in the house?
Yes, I'm still here.
Thank you so much. So we missed her in the keynote address. She'll be giving us a closing remark.
Thank you. Thank you. So let me quickly, I know we've our time is overspent. I want to start with the appreciation. First to one second. To our partners, Arise Africa, for this innovative partnership opportunity. I want to appreciate Cognito team. That's why you're hired, to bring innovation into voice. We can see that. We haven't had anything like this before. I appreciate all the panelists, the moderators, that's the name, beautiful Igbo name. They've really modeled it. So thank you so much for partnering with us on this platform. This is a very, very interesting topic and one that I picked interest the moment I saw it. Because I look at when we started having this conversation, I was going through for everything we do within the development sector. Our metrics has always been what the UN put out there. And by the estimation, by 2030, we would have achieved inclusive and sustainable urbanization. And I asked myself that question. Can we do that? We have 7 years left. Should we feel, because I get a lot of, how do I put it, downcast moments when some people were speaking. I'm glad Rita tried to bring a positive angle to all that. We are guilty, every one of us, of failing in this mandate, especially for those of us within the development sector. I can't tell you the number of flights we fly, the pollution we put out there. We are also doing a whole lot to improve the system. it's interesting to say that every one of you seated at that panel is already breaking the barrier. That's the topic. Currently sitting with a group of young people who have inspired me. I mean, I came here to engage them. I sat with people who are, I think the oldest is about 20-something years old, who already got it together, who know what they want in life, who are smart, speaking with confidence. Majority of them are coming from the remotest part of Lagos State. And these are people who ordinarily wouldn't have that opportunity. But for the kind of projects we do within Voice and with other donors, that we're able to bring that linkage of this urban core into limelight, to also participate, to take charge of spaces where conversations, big conversations are happening. We've also had Chike, when he spoke, he's breaking barriers within the aviation sector through a Voice program, which I coordinate in Nigeria. We're so proud of that project. Our effort with that project is to show that we can actually be inclusive within the aviation sector. That's the kind of modern Nigeria that we want to see. We are breaking barriers through projects like literacy, where we have young people who are in remote parts of Enugu State being exposed to the technology world for the first time, getting engaged in political conversations online, because we found out that during NSAS, they were those who were left behind. We are breaking these barriers through various projects that we're already doing. So kudos to every one of us. I like the fact that, Rita, you raised the idea of our resilience as Africans. We need to do more. Continue to do what we are doing, deepen the conversation, but beyond our projects, what are we doing in our private lives as individuals? We've built our big mansions in different parts of Lagos and Abuja. Did we create little space for green life? A lot of us don't think through that. I saw our Arusha team here. I was in Arusha recently. I flew from Ethiopia to Arusha, and I think there are about 3 of us who were Black. This is Boeing, this is Airbus. Hundreds of people from Europe and America, Westerners, coming into Arusha. It was for a reason. And then I got to Arusha and I was asking myself, you know, in the plane, I was like, there must be something about this Arusha. I got to Arusha and I realized it's something as unique as what we have in Bauchi State or Gombe State. And that is the beauty of Africa. So when we rush into modernization, it's beautiful to have what we have in New York, where Rita and Chike made reference to. It's also wonderful to acknowledge that what we have in Arusha is something you don't get anywhere else. Otherwise, the Westerners are not stupid to rush to that. So from my personal perspective, I think we need to appreciate what we have as Africans. And as we dive into this whole modernization thing, let's acknowledge that there are things that have made us unique and preserve them. Let's also acknowledge that we are all guilty of issues around the environment like pollution, especially those of us in development sector. We can't do without traffic. I can tell you every one of them have flown through about 3 cities within this week by air. Our offices are generating a lot of this pollution. So we look at those bad aspects, which we keep pondering around what we can do to get it better. And then we think through our projects, our personal life. What can we do, to come in between? And I've talked about what every one of us here are doing. Also, I wouldn't like to forget a project that Oxfam did in Katsina State. Millions of euros we invested in Katsina State purely to plant trees. So I believe we are doing a lot, and let's also look at it from the positive angle. I know we need to do more, and platforms like this, conversations like this is what we need. That's the little bit we can. We can't find alternative to airplane in one day. We can't stop using the hotels that use the big generators and stuff because we need them. Those are the parts of modernization we need to embrace. But we can also, in our little ways, think of how we mainstream environmental rights into our projects. We can think of how we protect our environment through our personal life, like simple gardening. You build mansion, keep a little space for gardening. We can think through how we can be inclusive in our projects and also in our personal life. We recognize one of the presenters couldn't make his speech, and a lot of us were frustrated. It's all part of inclusion. To understand that a lot of us will be connecting from some not from big cities like this, and so might experience such a technological hitch. So we need to appreciate all that and take everything into consonance when we think through our programs, when we think through our private life. So thank you once again, Christy, and the entire Cognito team. Cass, I can see you. Thank you to my East African team. I saw every one of you. Thank you to everybody who have been there. I'm proud of this voice project and the beautiful, wonderful troubles we are making across Africa. Thanks so much. Have a pleasant evening.
Thank you so much, Ichoma. And yes, she said, beautiful troubles. We need to go out there and keep making beautiful troubles. That is how we take back our city, and we amplify voices, you know, of stakeholders, the amplified, the marginalized people. We are all stakeholders
I like the beautiful trouble
in this. So thank you so much. So with two-thirds of our economy being informal, which makes up about 93% of jobs being informal, we need to, this is it's a situation that we need to really pay and call attention to. Hamzat has mentioned we need to focus on slums when urbanizing and not just in the cities. You know, we need to, urbanization, you know, presents an immense opportunity, you know, to accelerate progress in our cities. The potential impact on Africa's economy, you know, social, political landscape, you know, it's really profound, and potential impact even in Africa economy as a whole, you know, it's large. So we need to think of new approaches, tailored to local dynamics. I know it, and also challenges, you know, that lies ahead. We need to start thinking about how to address them, you know, even from inception. The task of addressing Africa's urban development challenges may take a different path, you know, from the rest of the world. Rita had mentioned, you know, a bit of that. And we need to think about our social reality. We need to think about our culture and make sure that we're actually urbanizing the way we want to as Africans, and not the way the narrative that have been set for us, you know, by the world. And there are three things that were mentioned today that I want us to take home with. We need to have access to data, because a lot of things are happening in our communities and we do not know about. We need to have access to services. I mean, somebody mentioned that you can go to healthcare center and you're not even sure the person you're speaking to can hear what you say, so you can actually communicate to the person. We need to have access to finance. We need to think global and act local. And of course, amplify stronger voices, you know, of stakeholders that need to speak on behalf of the communities and the slums. And that is why the program most of us are doing here is called Voice. So we need to amplify those voices and localize mode of delivery. This is really important. We need to localize mode of delivery. It's nothing about us without us. You can't be planning for a city that we're living in and we're not part of it. Our voices has to be heard. And today, I really leave us with this charge that we all have to be parts of the solution we are trying to achieve. And let your voice count. Thank you all so much for joining us. And definitely, we know that we have to carry this conversation forward. So looking forward to collaborating with everybody in future. Thank you so much, Rights Africa, for this opportunity to be part of this year's festival. Good day, everyone.